Yeah, I was giving you a heads up.
Or covering your ass.
Man, fuck you!
Even though Sylvester Stallone has publicly said he's done with the Rambo franchise, that hasn't stopped fans from buzzing about the possibility of Rambo 6. It makes sense, honestly. Stallone has a habit of stepping away from his famous characters only to return later. Rocky, Barney Ross from The Expendables, and yes, even Rambo himself have all had comebacks after he'd claimed to be finished. Rambo first showed up in First Blood back in 1982, based on a 1972 novel by David Morrell. From that moment on, John Rambo became one of the biggest action icons of the 80s. After Rambo III hit theaters in 1988, most people figured that was it for the franchise. But Stallone surprised everyone when he brought the character back 2 more times, once in 2008's Rambo and again in 2019's Rambo Last Blood. So when a character's already been resurrected twice, it's easy to see why people keep asking Stallone whether there's more in store. Even though Last Blood sounded pretty final, especially with a title like that, fans aren't convinced it's really the end. Stallone's history with sequels makes them wonder if there's one more story left in the tank. The truth is, a Rambo 6 announcement isn't likely anytime soon. Stallone has said as much himself. But that hasn't stopped folks from tossing around ideas. The thought of John Rambo returning, whether played by Stallone or someone else, isn't totally far-fetched. And with the way reboots and legacy sequels are flying around these days, it's not hard to imagine something eventually happening. Now, let's talk about the most recent update, which came straight from Stallone himself. During an interview at the Toronto International Film Festival, he addressed Rambo 6 head-on. According to him, he's not planning to revisit the character. He was pretty blunt about it too, saying, "Rambo, I could leave him. He's done pretty much, even though they want to do another one, but what am I fighting? Arthritis?" It was a funny line, but also a real one. At 77, Stallone knows it's getting tougher to pull off the physical demands of a character like Rambo. He didn't deny that people still want more Rambo, but it sounded like he's made peace with leaving it behind. As of now, there's no confirmation for Rambo 6. There are no plans in motion, no studio green light, and no production buzz. Stallone doesn't seem interested, which means the only real way forward would be to reboot the franchise with a different actor, or hope he changes his mind. But based on his recent comments, that doesn't seem likely. And if you're wondering about casting, that's the big question. Could anyone really step into Stallone's boots and pull off John Rambo? Right now, there's no official word on that. No casting talks, no shortlists, nothing. Still, you can imagine a bunch of names floating around in fans' heads. Guys like John Cena or Reacher's Alan Ritchson could maybe do it. Even someone like Henry Cavill, who's definitely not the typical Rambo type, might bring something new to the role. Of course, if someone else takes over, the character would naturally feel different. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of like how multiple actors have played James Bond or Jack Ryan. Each one adds their own flavor. If Rambo 6 ends up being a reboot, that might be the approach they take. New actor, familiar character, fresh spin. Story-wise, there are a couple of directions they could go. One option is to pick up after Last Blood, maybe with Rambo stumbling into another high-stakes situation, kind of like he did in First Blood. Another idea that's been floated before is a prequel that explores his time in Vietnam. Stallone himself mentioned wanting to do that years ago, to show how Rambo went from an all-American kid to the emotionally scarred veteran we met in the first movie. There was even an earlier version of Rambo 5 that Stallone worked on with David Morrell, the author of First Blood. That concept was scrapped, but maybe some of those ideas could find new life in Rambo 6. At this point, though, the most realistic path for the franchise seems to be a reboot. Even if Stallone steps away, the demand for more Rambo stories is still strong. Other action franchises have survived recasting major roles, so it's not out of the question here. People just want to see more of Rambo, whether it's the same version or a new one. Interestingly, even though Rambo 6 isn't happening yet, a Rambo prequel is actually in development. This project, titled John Rambo, will explore the character's time during the Vietnam War and is being produced by Millennium Media. It was announced at the Cannes Market and is supposed to start filming in Thailand this October. So, who's behind it? The director is Jalmari Helander, the guy who made Sisu and Rare Exports, and the screenplay is coming from Rory Haynes and Sohrab Noshirvani, who worked on Black Adam and The Mauritanian. That's a solid team. Stallone isn't currently involved, at least not officially, but that could always change. He's been advocating for a prequel for years, after all. Producers on board include Avi Lerner, Les Weldon, and a few others familiar with the franchise. Jonathan Younger, the president of Millennium Media, talked about the project being a tribute to one of their greatest action franchises ever and said they were excited to bring Rambo to a whole new generation of viewers. Helander, for his part, is clearly passionate about the project. He said he's been a fan of Rambo since he was 11, and now that he's getting the chance to make his own Rambo movie, it feels like his childhood is suddenly coming full circle. He sounds genuinely excited to bring the character back to the big screen. So what does this mean for John Rambo as a character? Well, for starters, the prequel has already lined up a promising team. Helander's background shows he knows how to handle genre films in a unique way. Rare Exports was horror, sure, but it was clever and fresh. And Sisu, his action film about a lone prospector going full savage on Nazis, feels very Rambo-esque. If he can bring that same energy to John Rambo, fans could be in for something special. Looking at the full timeline of the Rambo franchise, it's clear just how much ground the series has already covered. It all began with First Blood in 1982, followed by Rambo First Blood Part 2 in 1985 and Rambo III in 1988. After a long hiatus, the franchise returned with Rambo in 2008 and, more recently, Rambo Last Blood in 2019. It's been a solid run, with Sylvester Stallone's performance serving as the backbone of the series. Still, it's not entirely far-fetched to imagine the story continuing without him, especially if the franchise is taken in a new and refreshing direction. Stallone's original idea for a prequel actually involved a younger version of Rambo as a high school golden boy, basically the perfect kid before life and war shattered him. That version of the story might not line up exactly with what Helander's team is making, which could explain why Stallone isn't currently attached. But again, never say never. He knows about the project, and he might still get involved down the line. As for the prequel's concept, some fans are raising eyebrows. If you like what we do here on this channel, then don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more updates like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.